Hi, everybody. Welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable. I don't think that's how it was supposed to start, but
No, I was waiting to hear like the intro thing.
I'm in charge today, so that's how it's going to start. Sorry about that. It had like an automated thing all set up on the back end to play like that, so I don't know. Put Lisa in charge. Shake things up. So, welcome to the 181st episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. Our hosts for today are wonderful Greg from Rivet. We have Andrew from the Legacy Right. We have my wonderful friend, everyone's best friend, Satoshi Sean. And little old me, Lisa Mighty Davis from the Mighty Lair. So we need to talk about the update for the WBRT layer ownership tokens distribution from last week's episode. The topic was post-election commentary. No, that's this week's.
This week. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what it says, but that was not the topic last week.
Last week was pre-election. Which team's better?
Okay, so last week was pre. This week is post. So each host last week will receive 133 lot. Each topic contributor.
Wow, the topics are like we went to Thailand.
What?
You guys get it.
Okay.
Post and then pre-op and post-op.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Thailand. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 55 lot. Last week's theme was nominated by Darox. He will receive 55 lot. Ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edicts, government votes, and the theme of this week is post-election commentary. Community questions, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So then... Oh, I didn't do something right. We go to... Oh, you guys, hold on. See, I'm dropping the ball on this. I don't have my questions up. I apologize.
Fine.
Come on. Don't fail me now, Dan. Why is my link not working? Is anybody else able to pull up the question?
I can get them on my phone here. Let's see.
Mine's saying like, hold on, I'm doing something wrong. Oh, hold on, I was clicking the wrong. It's just pulling up like a blank Den social for me. Why am I? This is obviously operator error. I apologize, you guys. Lisa doesn't get to host anymore. Let me try doing this. Let me try copy paste into this browser. That might work better if I'm in, maybe if I'm in the same browser. Aha, it worked. Okay, let me share with you guys. Here we go. Post-election. So here are the questions. Oh, this is spam and click to evaluate. Do we want to click to evaluate it? Even though it's spam?
I mean, you can always...
Yeah, I saw that. It's weird. I've never seen that before.
What's our vote?
Yeah. We're not afraid to
Can't
see
hurry.
it.
Just says notice.
You can bring it. Can you show it?
Oh, you're not able to see it?
No, you're not showing it.
No.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, it had a big block on it, and then it just says the word notice. So I don't know why that's spam or why that would be blocked.
Why it has 9,000 votes?
Yeah, somebody really liked it, even though they called it spam. That sounds like a personal battle or something going on there.
Yeah, somebody must have had 9,400 some odd votes to just put towards
nothing.
Boosting their spam.
Boosting their spam. Okay. So, question: does Tramp have the authority to fire Gensler? I think he means Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
To fire
Can you zoom in
Gensler.
maybe a little?
I'm sorry?
Can you zoom in maybe a little?
Yeah, let me see if I make it a little bit bigger.
That does say Trump.
Yeah. Does he have the authority to fire Gensler on the first day of his term?
First off, that question is the perfect example of Trump versus everyone else, because how the
President
hell
Donald Trump.
how they missed that name? I mean, he would have gotten that right away if he was running against himself.
Yep. Donald Trump.
So, who wants to start with the Trump question?
Sure. He technically could, right, fire Gensler right away because, well, he could have him. I believe he could have him removed as the chair. I don't think he can end his term, but he could put somebody else in the chair.
Oh, okay.
And then once
Like a
they
surrogate.
That's how it would work.
they're very, very, very lazy. He's not going to stand. He won't.
Right.
He won't stand for that. So since he can't sit in the chair, he would just
Yep.
go away.
And this has to do with the fact that SEC is considered, well, the government would call it an independent agency. I would call it a quasi-independent agency. But the reappointment period, absent somebody resigning, is sort of preset. But I imagine that what will happen is that Gensler will resign when faced with being removed ignominiously from his chair position. So
So you think it's just a pride issue?
Yeah, I think it's more like a get ready to have your agency ridden by the executive, and get ready to have somebody who used to be in the minority power there in charge of you. So, do you think Gensler would enjoy working for Hester Peirce, for example? Probably not, because the agenda would be so shifted.
I think it's going to be a lot more. I think it's going to be a lot more like it used to be, where people will resign because they have no support structure anymore, and everyone around them is scared. Like the DOJ, we talked about, or been talking about how they fired Smith right away.
That's awesome.
And they're dropping charges. They're like, hey, we're playing nice. Don't look at our agency too closely. Don't bring us out into the light with a big investigation, or be talking about us. So I think like Mayorkas, I mean, they did everything to get rid of the guy, and he just wouldn't leave because he had this massive support structure under him and around him. And I think that they know that's not happening anymore. It's going to be like, if they fight, it's going to be much more of a public fight. So I think that kind of everyone's going to be standing everyone in the back. They're ready. They know that's coming, so they're like, yeah, I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the private sector.
Interesting.
That probably falls
Andrew,
under
that
probably falls under the umbrella of social pressure as well. I mean, when you're in a situation like this, it's just kind of par for the course.
So I think that's interesting. I think my opinion on this question would be that no, it won't be. If it's specifically about being the first day, it won't be, because he's made so many promises to do so much. He's got to free Ross. He's got to get the J6ers out. He's got so many other things to do. The very first day, I don't think Gensler's not the top of his list, in my opinion. But
I think the world has changed a lot more than you give credit for there, because by your own self-admission, you're not as into the pop culture kind of stuff. I can't tell you how cool and weird it was to watch, because I was flipping back and forth the whole election night between like 10 different streams. The legacy stuff, Crowder, Patrick Bet David, The Blaze, and who What's Shapiro's thing?
Oh,
Daily Wire.
Turning Point.
Daily Wire. All these, and they're all very nice produced, great panels. Patrick Bet-David thing. There's so many things I want to go over about that. It was amazing. But like half of them during it, we're talking about Bitcoin, and we're talking, hey, Bitcoin is just hitting an all-time high. Bitcoin is going up. As Trump's doing better, Bitcoin's going up. As Trump's doing better, futures are going up. It was like people. So, and they talked about how people are voting with their feet by leaving California, by leaving New York, by leaving these places. And then they were talking about how now people are voting with their money because they're buying in, all this buying pressure is up now as things are going a certain way. So I thought that was a big thing, how they brought up Bitcoin. And then they started talking about Bitcoin in general. But then I forget which one of these shows it was on. Said, it's weird. It at the loudest I heard them ever scream at a Trump rally. Remember those words? At a Trump rally was when he talked about, he was at the Bitcoin thing, and he talked about how he was going to fire the guy that runs the SEC. So this is a political pundit guy didn't even
know who it was. Wow.
He said, the guy that runs the SEC, and they went crazy. And I was like, wow, that wasn't even a Trump rally. That was the Bitcoin rally.
Bitcoin conference. Yeah.
But that's what stuck in their head. And that was brought up during this whole thing. So there is a focus. Like, people remember that he said it. People remember that he said he was going to do it. So there's, I think, even more pressure for him to come through on that.
Well, our fearless leader, Joe Rotes, is watching in the wings and has a question for us. So he says, what does Trump winning and Gensler leaving mean for projects like Dragon Chain? Sean, you want to start us off?
Yeah, the sentiment that I've heard and seen from I don't want to call the billionaire community, but like the business community. What's his name? The bald guy. Haven't slept very much.
Jeff Bezos?
I think Bezos, right?
No, not that bald.
Gary Gensler. There's a lot of them.
He's not a business guy. The one that said he's pulling out of New York, he's not going to do anything in New York anymore because of what they did. I almost had it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Big, tall guy, big guy.
Think of the name.
Yeah.
Can't think of the name right off the top of my head.
But in the chat, if you can think of the guy's name, because you guys aren't talking, so you can just, think of it. O'Leary. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
O'Leary said, I can't believe I remembered his name and forgot what I was talking about. Only so much room, only so much RAM.
He's not doing business in New York anymore.
Yeah, but he what was
so the question is, what does Trump winning and Gensler leaving?
Oh yeah,
projects like Dragon Chain. So you're
the business community. Him, Patrick Bet-David. He had that hedonistic billionaire on. A lot of these people were talking about just kind of Musk, that the focus is going to be put on innovation, like what Rhodes has always talked about, that these technologies, these smart people, were taking their projects, their business, their innovations out of the United States because of regulation, because of how tough it is to start something or to work on something, and because of the uncertainty of, hey, if I build this here, are they going to come down on me? And so in the business and tech, but just business in general, everyone's talking about how, man, now I can, and it went to tax cuts too. People started talking about, I'm going to put more money into my business, and Patrick Bet-David gave a big speech about it, like to the other, multimillionaire billionaires. It's like, hey man, this time take your people in and give them something. Give them part of the money you're getting back in your tax cuts. Even if you're not going to do it, throw them a party.
Wow.
Take them somewhere. He said, and explain to them why you're able to do it so that everyone can understand how things work. That I can have more money now because of less regulations, less cost, less taxes I have to pay. I have more money to grow the business. I have more money to put into it, and I have more money to give you guys. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the sentiment overall that I've been getting and can see is that they're excited about, with him, and not just him, because he's talking about bringing in, Elon and all these people to cut back the size of the government. And when you talk about that, the fact that we've, as a nation, as an empire, as whatever word I can use to make it a bigger deal, we have never closed one alphabet letter agency in the history of America. And that we're going to make that history now. I know maybe they're not going to shut down everything. It's not going to be as huge, but it's going to happen. We're going to make history, and at least something's going to be shut down.
Interesting. Probably, Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Go ahead. I was going to say probably more than even we might be willing to expect, and I can get into that in a second.
Okay. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this question? What is Trump winning and Gensler leaving?
I guess just kind of go back to what we were talking about before we started. There was, with Trump coming in and Gensler on the way out the door, I think you don't have to worry if you're a business about trying to survive by the skin of your teeth because of the legal environment. It's a lot safer to come out of the gray market and try to and entrench yourself and make a stake in how business or any project that you want to do. Like I was talking to you about before, Lisa, back in like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, there was a German hardware engineer named Ralph Colocco, and he reverse engineered the cell processor from the PS3. Maybe it was more than 8 years ago. But the German government, at the behest of the Sony Corporation, went and raided his house. And so he just dumped everything on the internet. And he just disappeared off the face of the earth, probably in jail or something like that, unless they asked him to work for him, because that's what they usually do. But you don't have to worry about, and for at least for the next foreseeable 4 to 8 or 12 years, it depends on who wins after Trump gets out of office, what's going to happen.
Yeah, great point. Great point. The cycle continues. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been pretty optimistic about this because towards the end of the last Trump presidency, he put in place an executive order that added a new classification to the accepted service called Schedule F. And what that would have allowed him to do would be to reclassify a bunch of, lifer executive agency employees as presidential appointees instead, and would have been given therefore direct power to fire them without the protections of the sort of the federal workers unions, which to me is a joke in the first place, right? The fact that there are federal workers unions for people who work off of tax money. Right? Mm-hmm. These are people who are literally fighting to protect their jobs through union power, through sort of like mass coercion, which is sort of the way I think of unions. That once they're classified as Schedule F, they will no longer be able to avail themselves of. So it won't be like 2 years of litigation to get rid of anybody. and that's a really huge thing. Now it's going to take like 6 months or so to get that back in place because the Federal Civil Service was so freaked out by it that the Biden administration spent the last 8 to 12 months or so putting in fortifications so that it was harder to put Schedule F back in place. So it's going to be 6 to 8 months before we can get that rule in place. But putting that rule in place back on the table means that the Department of Government Efficiency can make recommendations that the president can actually put teeth to.
Interesting.
Yeah, their union should just be the American people.
Well, and we don't really even need that because you can just defund them. And that, I think that's the way they can avoid having to even jump through those hurdles of the Schedule F. I do want to touch on our friend Bit by the Coin has a great response to this question. Hopefully less regulation, more innovation, a reset button is in order. And that's where like we go back to constitutional republic and freedom for innovation. I couldn't find it the other day, but there is some kind of legislation around getting in the way of innovation, impeding innovation in America. There's actually like laws around that. And to see that hasn't been, there's so many laws in America that we could all be.
The SEC charter, I believe you're talking about.
Well, okay, there you go.
Literally, it's part of the charter. Is
it really that it says it in the charter?
Well, the way that it's read,
push innovation and make it easier for businesses to start.
I know that I've read it somewhere.
The quote orderly formation of capital is how they phrase it.
Oh, okay.
Which is a nice euphemism for restrictions on the way capital is allowed to form. And this can be seen, I think, the most broadly in how the government reacted to crowdfunding early on. Like if you go back and look at how that happened, the SEC came in and regulated crowdfunding, right? With the goal being over a certain amount, you're not allowed to crowdfund it anymore. It's illegal. And it sort of killed some of the biggest projects. They did the same thing in 2018 to the ICO craze. Like the ICO craze was just like unconstrained capital formation. And this is what they came after. The SEC's purpose is basically to put a throttle on the rate at which projects can build up money to start doing big things. And it's a big part of it is about gatekeeping who's allowed to start big things, right?
Right. You go back to that video of Gensler teaching at MIT, and he tells why they do it. So that to stop people with innovation, so that you have to give, if you want to do your project, then maybe you go to these big markets or the big banks and you give them 20 or 30% of your project so that you can be part of the market too. Like he literally says these words.
Right. And so much of it is about constraining the type of innovation that can disrupt the system.
Mm-hmm. Choosing the disruptors. Yeah. And choosing the market makers. Yeah.
Right. And choosing who's not allowed to engage in the creation of disruptive ideas. Their
choosing how big the disruption is also.
That's right.
Their ultimate fear is a new wave of Ubers, right? Where some radical capitalist like Travis Kalanick or whatever comes in and has this idea that can grow so fast that regulation can't keep up with it. And that's what they're afraid of is innovation outpacing the government's ability to throttle it.
Well, and I guess my concern or my fear is, Trump and this was, you guys know I'm a Trumper. I love him. I think he's great. But my biggest fear was that he was going to get back in and everyone's going to go, oh, good, he saved us. And everyone can go back to sticking their hands down their pants and watching football again. And then meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And America goes back to sleep again. And that we cannot have that. Like, we can't think that the government's here to help and they're going to save us, and that's my biggest fear is, oh, yay, Gary's out. But it wasn't Gary that went after Ripple. It was Jay Clayton who was put in by Obama. Like, we're missing. Gary is more responsible for Russia than he is for going after Ripple or a lot of the innovation that he was just sitting there sitting at the desk at the time when it was hitting the news.
Oh,
you
Then
know,
Ripple gave
crypto was a
so much
distraction
money
for
to
them.
the Kamala campaign, so it's that's more just disheartening to me. Like they're so beat down by the system, but they're like, we'll play nice.
Mhm.
You know, so maybe they're just hedging their bets. I don't know, but I mean, when
I
they
think a lot of
did
it,
that, it made no sense to me.
I think a lot of it is an attitude thing too, right? Like I was pretty little in the 80s, but I remember looking back on it in the 90s and hearing people talk about the Morning in America speech, right? This idea that people had a reason to be optimistic and that we should be trying to build something great here. That idea returned at sort of midway through this campaign, I think, and just never got named.
Mm.
That what we're about to see is, and you can never really discount the power of American optimism when it's unleashed. And I think that's what we have a chance to do here, is resurrect that attitude and give it its day in the sun again, to see America be remade in the image of the people who are building.
Smells like a new day. We'll see. Okay, our wonderful I Am, who we are sending lots of positive energy and prayers for his family today. We're missing him, but we have him in spirit and meme visiting us. So he's got old SBF and his fuzzy hair and FTX on there. So my fellow WBRT panelists, I won't be able to join today's show. I hope someone can embody my agorist perspective and address the questions as I would, advocating for liberty and promoting individual freedom from an anarchist standpoint. So this is our challenge to us, to be from that standpoint.
Yeah, he emailed me this the other day.
Okay, awesome.
You need to be the anarchist on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll leave it to you, Sean. To my WBRT fans and groupies, I will miss you too. Oh, how sweet. LOL. Sincerely, I am. Plus, on the QT, I bribed a guard who has agreed to let SBF appear on our show this week. This is why I could not be on today's show, to let everyone know that SBF will be on the WBRT this week to take block-related questions. Note, per the advice of counsel, there might be parts of this case he is not at liberty to talk about. So where is his question? If I miss it?
I think that was just a statement.
Just a statement. Okay. Yep. Then we have a reply. Oh, look at this. The F word. So I need to give that one some votes. Oh, I'm not logged in. Darn it. I'll have to go on the other browser and do it. Where I'm logged in. Okay. I am replied. Original question. Free ballots inside 10x your vote. Vote here. No ID required. The 2020 election was marred by significant voting corruption, which adversely affected the public. Donald Trump also faced challenges related to allegations of voter fraud. Really? It would be reasonable to expect that he might advocate for solutions such as transitioning to paper ballots or encouraging states to adopt blockchain-based voting systems. I hope he initiates a DOJ investigation into these matters. Would you trust him, though? Anyway, sorry. I will try to keep my comments to myself. Investigation into these matters involves blockchain experts to propose improvements to our voting systems. Do you think he will take these actions? Bottom line question, will Trump make meaningful steps to eliminate voter fraud and corruption in our elections and prosecute those responsible for these serious offenses?
I think so. And once so there's a big thing that he admitted to this time around, which is very difficult for him to do. He does not like to say, I was wrong. He has a giant ego. Like we can all agree on that. And I've heard him say a bunch of times on all the podcasts he went on, which there's so much to talk about this election, that where change has happened, and just social indictments are thrown down. But he said, I I built this multi-million-dollar hotel in Washington, down from the White House, and it was bought by the Waldorf Astoria. But he
It
said,
was a post office originally. Did you know that?
yes. But he said, I've only been in D.C. 17 times, and in building this hotel and all the work we did, I never stayed the night. He said, I had I wasn't part of DC. I only knew about everything from like a donor standpoint. He said, I was literally kind of a babe in the woods when I got there. So like, and he was still a radical, but he was a radical who didn't know anything. He said, now I know how it works. Now I know who is going to stab you in the back and smile to your face. Now I know how things go. And he said, I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. But now I know a lot more when it comes to the military, when it comes to, other departments. I know how things work. I think the biggest thing he thought, because he tried to run it like a business, is I got this guy that's a smart guy, put him in charge of this this agency or this department, and he's going to fix it. And that's literally like having it's like putting a babe into the wolves, but it's really not. He thought he could put this big wolf into, the den of wolves, but it's still a den. It's one guy. I think he understands now. You have to send a whole team in to fix a problem, because there's so much corruption. There's so much that's wrong. One person can't go in there and do anything. It takes I think we all think that so much has to be torn down. So I think nothing can be fixed, like you said, by one person. I don't think the FBI can be fixed. I don't think that if you're not going to just shut it down and get rid of it, you have to have like an entire team to go in and battle.
I don't know. The Durham report was produced. They didn't do a lot with it, but it's out there now. And now with Trump coming in, they could go back through that and say, wait, what did he find? And
who's they?
Trump and his team.
Yeah, you want him to do 87,000 different things. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be a group of people, and he knows that now. He's not going to be able to do 100 different things. He can't even sign that much stuff in a period of time.
I think he's already done.
It's like what growing up in the in the colonial North. There's a joke, because everywhere you go, every old hotel or bed and breakfast says Washington slept here. And I remember there's a song that we had to learn in second grade, and it was like, Washington slept here, Washington slept here. Oh, what a bore. Washington slept here, Washington slept here. How did he have time for the war? Because it's like there's like more hotels where he slept than there was like days in the in the time he
of
was
a normal human being back then.
Yeah, it's like 9,000 places that he slept in 2 years. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it's like that. He doesn't have time to, like you said. On one hand, you say, he can't just go in and fix everything, and everyone has to learn. Blah, blah, but then you say he can go in and fix everything because of this and this.
I didn't say he could go in and fix everything. I said
who is they? You said Trump
and his team. Yeah, but I think he's already done a lot of this. But the question is specifically, will Trump take meaningful steps to eliminate voter fraud and corruption in our election and prosecute those responsible for these serious offenses that I am just mentioned? So what's your response to that?
Yes, he is. My point is he's not going to just like make a czar. It will be a team. It may be a small team for every state, but there's a lot of things he can't do because those powers are supposed to are sent to the state. But I think that's going to be a big focus as far as as far as exposing that. Um, and we may go back, at the suggestion of, because I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if he can say it's going to be paper ballots, because that's kind of the argument, is that states have a lot of control over the election process, which is how it should be. I think states should have a lot more say on just everything, and the federal government should be small, a lot smaller.
But
But
he could bring solutions, and
yeah,
then
I
the
think
state
solutions,
could decide, like you're saying.
and then a domino effect. Texas is doing it. Oklahoma's doing it. All these other places are doing it. And then 2 years from now, the election, I think if we do have that system in place, and we're able to say, hey man, these states did it this way by hand, the old fashioned way, and no one's complaining, things went easier, and they got everything, closed off and done in one night. And because you have still, I don't know if Arizona's even been called or done.
It'll be 10 days, they said.
See, if you're doing the new fancy better way of doing things, and you can't, and your way sucks compared to paper ballots, a bunch of volunteers, or even if they're paid volunteers that are like temporary jobs to count the votes, you can't argue with that. I think that it'll actually go away by the next election, if we have another election. That's
interesting.
That's something we can talk about in current events.
In current events, okay. Andrew, what are your thoughts on? Do you think Trump will make meaningful steps?
I'd kind of comment on what Sean was talking about. I could see this working out as like building a framework or a roadmap, where he worked in 2 acts. First act is, try to go in and fix things the old-fashioned way, the legal way, where everybody just like, oh yeah, well, I'm working from within the system, and knowing that they don't like the way he presents himself and his style, and that they would try to do something dirty to get rid of him, and like they did with COVID, and obviously they cheated with Joe Biden and all that. And the second act, bring in a team from the outside, like he went to the Libertarian Party, and there's a bunch of chaos with that, and bringing people from the outside. Because remember, Donald Trump knew what's his name, Andrew Napolitano, before he even ran for president. So this could have been something that they've been talking about for a long time, like in secret. And this is just a pitching an idea. It doesn't have to be, but this could be his second act of how he anticipated things to go.
Interesting.
Now, directly to answer William's question, I think a meaningful step wouldn't be a centralized audit of how things ran. I think maybe have, more traditional, like conservative states audit in more blue states, so that you don't have to worry about them corrupting from like we're friends here. We'll take care of you. Don't worry. We'll just give them a bullshit answer. You're going to have actual threats to how things operate if somebody from another state comes in to audit the way you behave.
Interesting. Greg, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that that largely, if there's going to be some federal action here, it's going to come from the Federal Election Commission, and I think that a lot of that is going to depend on congressional action as well, right? Like we can't put it all in Trump's court, but he can champion legislation that would allow for the FEC to, for instance, come in and say, you have to do it this way, right? You have to do it paper ballots. You have to do it, hand count on site at each of the election districts, and report it like we did, like once upon a time back in the day before it took weeks to get results out of some places. We could reimpose that top down, right? Now, whether or not that's good, is another question. But I think the route there is actually probably through the alphabet soup agency as opposed to by eradicating it. And I think that's probably going to be a pragmatic conclusion that they'll reach as well. So if they intend to do any of this stuff, it's going to be through FEC as opposed to through DOJ or anything like that.
Interesting.
That's my take.
Also, I think there's something that me and Lisa have been talking about this. I brought this up. Growing up, there was a 3-letter agency that was scared the shit out of people, and it was the FCC. Because I remember Howard Stern. So I went on Sirius Radio, and because basically you got this license to print money. One was like a casino license, and you can print money. The other one was you got a broadcast license, and you can print money. And anything that anyone did that threatened that was a huge, huge thing. Just a cuss word. The fact that your news agency could lie. I hate fake news. I hate the term. It's like date rape. I don't think it should ever be used. It's such a big deal when it comes to the guardians of the truth, of what journalists were. That's why the founding fathers gave them so much authority, because they were the guardians of the truth. And the fact that it's been gone. No one talks about it. And now, all of a sudden, when these the political winds shifted, the 60 Minutes thing, there was a think tank that made a big deal of it, sent them a letter, and they started an investigation into 60 Minutes. And imagine if one of the oldest...
It wasn't a think tank. Trump sued their butts.
No, it was a think tank that started it. The think tank wrote a letter about it, sent it out to other news agencies, but they sent it to the agency itself and said, "Hey man, do your freaking job. This is obvious. Look what they've done. They should have their license pulled." And they started an investigation. And 60 Minutes, I can't think of anything that's older, more well respected. That's like the face of journalism. So to have that, if it gets pulled, if it gets shut down, I think that would be such a good thing. That would be a loud call, because everyone missed the opportunity with Assange. They sent a clear message of who was in charge when they did what they did to Assange. This is a second chance.
But that's just asserting the same authority, just in a different way. That's not freedom. I mean, let the liars lie. You and I have talked about this before, and let the people decide for themselves. I mean, I think through this opportunity,
no.
This isn't free speech. Let me finish. Okay. People got tired of being told that they were racist and Nazis, and they saw the lies that mainstream media were propagating at them. And that is part of why the silent majority showed up like they did. And that's where I think that this licensing, free men don't ask permission. I thought we were coming out of this fog and enslavement and all of this. And I thought that was the goal. Maybe I'm the agorist today.
Well, absolutely not, because the only reason government is there is to protect people. And what you're saying is also because of what you just said, all the past 4 years happened. We have all the bad evils we do because people can find out no, it shouldn't have been allowed to happen in the first place. And it did, because these people didn't do their job. So these people need to do their job. And then it wouldn't have happened.
Who's going to hold them accountable? The one with the wand.
That's the job. That's what we gave up on. That's what we allowed to happen. That's what the people need to do. The people need to wake up and start holding them accountable.
Right, and that's where our Congress people have not been doing their job. They've been deferring to these agencies instead of writing legislation and being accountable to we the people for legislation around blockchain, whatever, and asking we the people what to do. They go, oh, well, that's the SEC's job. And then they keep getting reelected because they didn't do anything bad and they're not responsible. And it's the SEC's fault. And that's the BS answer. And so you're absolutely right. We need to hold
the best
Congress
example of that
accountable.
is when the first attempt happened on Trump. They called out the Secret Service. They both ends of the aisle. AOC was there. He's a former president. Blah 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 blah. They were all going, but if you look behind their public outrage, you saw the real fear. It's like, hey man, this could happen to me. You know what I mean? If you guys let it happen to him, I got 2 dudes that are assigned to me. He's got 30. It's like, and people hate me for a lot of reasons. So it's they do need to hold them. Everyone needs to do their job. Yeah. That is one of the basic things. Everyone needs to do their job, but when it comes to cleaning up these agencies, we talked about the SEC, the DOJ. That's just something that people don't even think about. Is the SEC? The term fake news shouldn't have been allowed to have grown or to be a thing. That's like their job, to make sure that stuff doesn't happen, to make sure that they don't show porn on PBS morning for kids. Those are all things that they're supposed to make sure doesn't happen, and they have not been doing their job.
Interesting. Well, so my thoughts on this question are: will Trump make meaningful steps to eliminate voter fraud and corruption in our elections and prosecute those? If he keeps his word, which I believe he does, then I believe he will do what he can. But to Sean's point, a lot of the choices are supposed to be made at the state level, although in a federal election. So I would think that they do have some, and I guess to Greg's point, there's an election board and a process and all that. So I guess he would give the suggestions. I still think somehow the National Guard of each state would be used, maybe for the counting, because they're not supposed to be political, and when they're in uniform and all that, or on duty. So maybe that would be the counters, something like that. I don't know all the solutions. I know he has been speaking at his rallies and specifically talking about the watermarks, which all of us conspiracy theory people were told we were crazy when we were talking about that and hearing about that. So I was very happy to hear about that. But I don't think blockchain voting, from what I understand and people I've talked to, that's not necessarily the answer, unless you're using blockchain to document. Maybe the watermark is on the paper and the blockchain is used to document the actual ballots, but your vote's not on the blockchain. So they're just tracking the paper.
So I can speak a little bit to this, because one of the things that I've done in my past was work for the state of Indiana, the legislature, right? And we built in-chamber voting systems for them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the way that this would probably work if you wanted to do something blockchain based would be that you would literally wheel the hardware into each election site, right, and wire it directly into the machines. The machines would still produce paper ballots, right? And it would be the act of voting at the time the vote was taken that would get recorded on chain as well, so that you could cross-verify between the paper and the blockchain to make sure that there wasn't a mismatch. This would allow for a kind of validation that we have never seen, right? Because you wouldn't be able to go in and revise the blockchain to say that there were this many paper ballots or whatever.
So each vote would have a hash of Bitcoin or whatever chain they chose to vote with.
Yeah, you would have a signature. It wouldn't necessarily be a transaction, but it would be like a sign. You'd essentially give each voter, each ballot, its own blockchain account, essentially. And when that vote was cast, it would sign cryptographically on chain in a way that only the individual voter going in could do one time. So when they hit the submit button, there'd be if you guys have ever signed, hit the sign button on your wallet, right, to say like sign me into this particular DApp. That would be how it would look from the standpoint of an on-chain transaction. Would be a cryptographic signature authentication for each vote. And then you would essentially have a record associated with each account, which would then be tied back to each paper ballot, so that you could make sure that there weren't more ballots cast than were issued, for example. And this could be a huge additional layer of security on the paper system.
Let me ask you something, Greg. Does this answer Lysander Spooner's secret vote needs a secret government comment? Is that like
give me I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. The quote is, I think, a secret vote means a secret government. Without them being able to authenticate all the information, they wouldn't know what's open in quiet tyranny. That's not the quote. That's just paraphrasing.
Right. I don't know if that would be the true risk here. I think the risk, of course, is still at the counter level, right? Because there would be people in possession of the hardware for recording this. So if you wanted to say like wheel in hardware that was essentially like a local blockchain that worked with each election site. You then wheel that out and have it be available to auditors to make sure that that there wasn't any funny business in the final tallies.
I think also there needs to be a system put in place that is a protocol where if something is obviously amiss, it's stopped and it's addressed. That was what happened. That's what happened in the last election. Is there were so many questions and odd things, and that's what those people wanted. Just wait a minute, these things are weird. Let's just look at them. And it's like no, can't look at it. We gotta do this. We gotta do this right now. We gotta prove this. And if you have 100,000 registered voters, and you have 104,000 votes, everything stops, and you have to figure out what happened, and you shouldn't be able to move on because that's a fundamental. It's very, very, it's in your face. You can't explain it. So there can't be a certain anomalies that are allowed to just move forward because that literally incentivizes cheating.
Well, that's where they weren't supposed to certify the vote, but they did.
Yeah, that's my point.
There were things in place
because they hid behind the fact that this is the protocol. We follow the protocol. We have to change the protocol. That if there's something that doesn't make sense, you stop and fix it or figure out what's going on until you move on to the next step.
Right.
Because you can. It's like, oh, we have to follow this protocol. This has to be done. But if Arizona wants to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks when everyone else can do it in hours, that's fine. It's such a in continuity. It doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. This is. We've kind of answered some of this or gotten around to some of this, but we should still address it. Will things really change during the Trump administration? Will Trump free Roger Ver, free Ian Freeman, free Ross Ulbricht, pardon Assange, pardon Edward Snowden? IAM's take is after having Mike Pompeo speak at one of his last rallies, I don't trust Trump that he will do the right thing. The reason he didn't release the FBI files was because Pompeo told him it wasn't a good idea. Trump listened to Pompeo. This is IAM's take on it. Greg, you want to start us off this time?
Yep. I don't think he'll. Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to get away with not freeing Ross, because that was a pretty big campaign promise. But I do agree that Pompeo is a snake, and that that people like Snowden, who's stuck in Russia still because we revoked his passport. This guy's still a U.S. citizen, right? And he just hasn't had a passport to get out of that country, right? This is the ridiculousness of it. Ross is coming home. I bet money on it. But the other men on this list, I suspect they remain in their current state. Maybe Snowden, because in my fantasy world, Edward Snowden is pardoned and then appointed Director of National Intelligence. But
jeez, that is
because
if you
really wanted to rein in that part of the government, you would put a man like that in charge of it. But yeah, I do think Pompeo's tendrils are still too far in, and this is the guy, right, that we all remember going and saying that that our free speech values would no longer shield people like that. And I suspect that to a certain degree that policy is hard to put to bed. Now Ross, he's coming home. He was imprisoned for way longer than was even reasonable to people who think he ought to have been imprisoned for what he did, and for those of us who think that all he did was start a business that should have long existed because a free people should be free to consume what they want and put what they want in their bodies. That he never should have been imprisoned to begin with. That guy's coming home, and I'm excited to see the day. Like I follow his account on Twitter. They still let him talk on X. Like occasionally you hear from Ross directly, and that he's just there waiting to be free to have his country stand up for his rights the way that they ought to have from the beginning.
You talk about fantasy world. And this is a little thing, but I'm really big on journalists, man. I really, really am, because, like I said, they're the guardians of the truth. Superman's secret identity was not a cop. It wasn't anything. It wasn't a congressman. It wasn't even a billionaire, like Batman. It was a journalist. Mm-hmm. And his whole thing is truth, justice, the American way. Truth is the first freaking thing. If you noticed, for the first time in hundreds of years, newspapers did not endorse a candidate, or they didn't endorse the candidate they usually do.
Right.
And I think a lot of people looked at that as a indictment of Kamala's terrible, but I think if you look at it as they were doing it because that party has done terrible things to journalism. If that was them standing back up for getting back to a free press, or that's a much bigger deal. That's a movement that is going in the right direction. It's not just, we don't want to back a loser. It's so in my fantasy world, they're going back to that. They're going back to knowing how important it is and knowing how important they are. So hopefully that's what it was, and it wasn't just,
right,
just not wanting to back a loser.
Well, I mean, and the real bullet we dodged here, I think, with respect to the press, is probably speaking licenses, where if you want to even have access to the post function on X, and you're not just a consumer and a reader, it is journalistic licenses, literally a free speech license, where if you can get this license, you can publish. I think that's what we would have had.
Is that free then?
No, I think that would have been the Harris regime, right? That's
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So the bullet we dodged is an even less free form of free speech, and what we may see is some semblance of the status quo continue, but at least under that status quo, it's not you can be arrested for hitting the post button without having gotten your proper licensure in. That's the place we were headed, I think.
Interesting. Andrew, what are your thoughts on, will we see all these gentlemen free?
Well, I think, the best, this is a pivot at the best in the second possible of the second act here of his presidency. Yeah, that would be I can see that happening, but just don't get ahead of the curve. Don't jump the shark here. Take it a step at a time and see what happens. That's the best thing you can hope for.
That's very conservative of you. I'm going to go way out on a limb and say that recently we saw Steve Bannon be released from prison. He came back with a tan. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Very interesting to me that you would come back from prison with a tan. I think we're all watching a movie. I'm going to go full conspiracy theory girl. I think that a lot of these guys have already been free and are hanging out, during, was it World War I? Probably World War II. They did the same thing. They would, like have guys get captured and then they'd go hang out on like these beach island things until the end of the war. And then they'd go home because we're in a war, guys. And so I think a lot of these guys might be getting a tan somewhere and they get to be out because they did their work and they did their part. And it's just a timing thing. And we had to get to Trump's second term. I don't think that's Mike Pompeo. If you notice, they keep talking about how he's back from the spa and looks so great. And he's like a different height and lost weight. And he's tan too. Come on. We're not
Prisons are good. Prisons are good diet plans. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Send me to that prison. I gotta tell you. So that's my conspiracy theory girl thing. I think we have everything. I think they are all safe and hopefully being treated really well and enjoying themselves. I would love, love, love to add McAfee to that list is what my additional comment would be, and to see him come home well and safe as well.
You think he's on the beach too, not dead?
Sure. Why do you think they never gave Janice his body?
No, that's a good point. That's a fair point. We don't even know if there is a body.
We don't even know. We don't even know.
No, I do have to laugh at the idea of Ed Snowden getting a tan.
Well, he can use sunblock.
I'm guessing that if he's on a beach somewhere, he's staying under the umbrella the whole time.
It might be use an umbrella. He'll get a little sand on his toes. We have the sand. Our good friend I am has another our last question before we go to current events. And then Joe has a current event question for us that I have highlighted to say for current events. And I am asked, do you believe that Donald J. Trump will follow through on his promise to remove Gary Gensler? Did we already have to answer this?
That was
at the beginning of it.
Yeah. And additionally, blockchain industry to receive. Okay. Additionally, well, maybe we'll focus on that. Will blockchain industry receive clear government guidance on securities and other issues that have hindered cryptocurrency growth in the United States? Andrew, you want to start us off with that one? Do you think?
I think
clear guidance.
I think appropriate. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for them to set up a framework for how they should accept cryptocurrency, because I think that that's actually counterintuitive to what the mission of cryptocurrency is. Right. But I mean, if you're somebody like Joe and you have this project and you've gone through all this legal trouble, I can see how it would be appealing to have a straight framework just so you can abide by the law.
Yep. Okay. Well, good.
Sean.
Good answer. Greg, what do you think?
I think that that there is a very good chance that we see something along these lines, though my hope is that, and setting aside Gary Gensler being actually fired right away, like if you demoted him to regular commissioner and put Hester Peirce in charge, he would just have to do the job that she tasks him with, and we would see his little commentaries emerge as the sort of the minority voice where he belongs, right?
He has to bring her coffee every day or something,
right? Which I don't have a problem with. I don't have a problem with Gary Gensler as having to do somebody else's bidding as someone in that department. Like I'd like to see him thrown out on the street, but if he's just removed from the directorial power, that's good enough for me. Now that said, I do think there is some risk, like Andrew was saying, about characterizing blockchain too much as a financial technology. because ultimately it's not, right. Ultimately it's got applications that are so
Right.
broad that that my worry with legislation that or regulation that authorizes its use would pigeonhole it, right. I don't want to see a situation where someone wants to do something cool and new with NFTs, and first they have to go through an SEC process to make sure it's okay. Like that, to me, that's nuts. That hobbles the technology and limits it to one
Right.
domain. When in reality, what it is a foundational technology. It'd be like if you go back to the early days of the email protocol. Technically, the SEC could have said this is a financial technology. If and when anybody is communicating financial information over email. So the SEC needs the right to read every email that ever gets sent to make sure that it's not being used for financial misinformation or whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, as a first place, email would have never spread. We would have never seen it get widely adopted. We would have just seen it be used in this weird one little context, in this weird one little niche industry, and that would be a crime against humanity from where I'm standing with blockchain. Like to limit it too much by defining it too hard
Mm.
is the danger. And so I hope that what happens is we see the SEC get reined back, and that we let blockchain be treated like regular software, where if you're doing something that has to do with securities, then yeah, okay, the SEC can regulate it. But if it's doing something that has to do with title and deed and property, that it's not going through that path. It's going through whatever path our society deems appropriate for that, right?
Or
Um,
anything to do with name, image, license,
right, and
patenting,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
and if it's to do with like you won this quest in your MMO, and so you get this tokenized sword or whatever that is
Mhm.
supposed to be a unique prize, that it's regulated like video games are regulated, to say or so to speak, as not at all, right. Because if it's being used for video games, then it should be left alone. um, this is the challenge, I think, with regulating blockchain. Is it applies to everything. It's database tech. Ultimately, it's just
Like
a new kind of
regulating a
database.
keyboard instead of what it's
Right.
being written with.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I,
we run the risk of like the same rule for like how cars in the United States have to have flat mirrors on the side instead of cameras, and so to this day, like European makers have to strip off the side view cameras and put flat mirrors on before they ship them to the United States.
What?
Um, yeah, this is Volkswagen. Every Volkswagen that you see in modern times, at least recently made Volkswagens, they have rear face or side view cameras in Europe, and they take those off and put flat mirrors on before they send them here. And we just don't want to see that happen with blockchain, I think.
Interesting. Andrew, what do you think about will we get more or did I already ask you?
you did, but
I
I wanted
did.
to comment on
Chime
something
in though,
Greg
yes.
said real quick.
Let us know your thoughts.
Uh, you were talking about the video game industry earlier. I'm not saying this should happen. I'm just asking what your perspective is. The video game industry self-regulated because they were advised to self-regulate. How would you see a self-regulating cryptocurrency market?
Great question.
I would see it as largely initially a return to the halcyon days of 2018, right? You would see a big boom in ICOs. You would see, which to me were just a more real form of crowdfunding, a more measurable form of crowdfunding. And then you would see things like Dragon Chain, right? You would see Dragon Chain break out into new territory, and you might see, for instance, um, uh, proof, like different kinds of proof being used
Yeah,
to formulate blockchains, like proof of mileage could be added to the transaxles of every single semi truck in the country, and it could mine a token as it drives, you know uh, emulating the process of tracking how much shipping mileage a driver has done, for example. And it's just, to me, it's a way to measure contributions to the economy that can then be rewarded. And the self-regulation of it would just see it spread to a lot of different sectors a lot faster.
Very interesting. So I guess my response would be, will blockchain industry receive clear government guidance? I don't know that it'll ever be clear. I love all of what Greg is saying. And I think that it would be important for it to maybe create a whole different, get it out of the SEC. It's also not part of the, what is the other one, the FTC or whatever. Like, it's a new innovation completely. And I mean, I like the idea where, like you were saying, the video gamers did self-regulation or whatever. I think that if it was handed to the blockchain industry, because part of this is that they don't understand it. Like, when you're listening to Congress talk about it, they don't understand what they're being told to make a law about. They'd have to go through so much education to get caught up to speed. Also, blockchain is not just US based, it's a global industry. You cannot say, oh, we're going to regulate ocean water just right here at our shore when it affects the whole world.
Yeah.
Like, you can't put rules on something that affects the entire world. And to be honest, the universe, depending on if we know there's aliens out there or whatever, because who knows who's going to use blockchain. It's way bigger than just one country or
One great example actually along those lines is if you wanted to actually coordinate the internet between Mars and Earth, such that they are relatively up to date with one another and can be like, if you want to be able to respond back to a post on Facebook from Mars, how do computers on Earth know that was done before you can even allow a response? Blockchain can play a major role in interplanetary internet coordination.
There you go.
This is a thing that if the SEC were in charge of it, they wouldn't even know where to begin with that
Right.
kind of regulation, right?
Right.
And then this is the kind of thing that we need to be careful about, not over-regulating this technology so it doesn't turn into the SEC takes over the email protocol.
Yeah. Sean, we are glad you're back. You are muted, but we'd love to know your thoughts on this question. So we've kind of already answered promising to move Gary or not, but this is a question from IM. This is, will the blockchain industry receive clear government guidance on securities and other issues that have hindered cryptocurrency growth in the US?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Because it's already, they're alcoholics, they're drug addicts, they're sex addicts, they're food addicts, they're all of the whatever anonymous groups, the 12-step programs. The first thing is admitting you have a problem. And they've already stood before Congress and said, we've been purposely ambiguous because we haven't wanted to give any kind of definitive stuff. They've already admitted, when it comes to blockchain and crypto, they're wrong. So I think now, with the focus on it, and with we have no idea how big we've become. 5%. If 5%, this was an article I read, if 5% of single-use crypto wallets in the U.S. Voted, they would change every swing state dramatically to whatever they voted for. 5%, let alone 10, 20, 30. So we've become, and that's something I kind of wanted to go over in the current events, how I think that as a society, certain things have been targeted, like fraternal organizations. My grandfather belonged to like 5 lodges, the Moose Lodge, and everything. It used to be designed to create communities within communities. And when you have people that are just coming together, and they're raise money for charity, and you can bring up all those good things they do, but in the end, they're a large group of people that communicate with each other, and that's what evil powers don't want. They do not want that.
That's why they did COVID.
That's political power. And what made me think about it was COVID, because it was a 33-degree Mason who was talking about it. And he's like, COVID killed us. It took away, we had shut down like 400 lodges. And it's like So if the Illuminati, Masons, that if they're talking about how bad it hurt them, and then he said we used to have so many more members and have much more of an actual, because he was talking about how they're not as powerful as people think they are. Those the elites and the leaders, I'm sure they're still up there, but their base of their real people who were not in it for whatever, if there's nefarious reasons, they're not in it for that. They're on the bottom floor where it's still talking about Christian values and this and doing good for the community. Those people are out now because their local lodges are shut down. But all of those other, remember the Shriners? There's just so many of these fraternal organizations where people would just meet, hang out.
Wouldn't you say social media has replaced that? Because we didn't have social media back then. And so now the online society groups, cliques, Telegram groups, that kind of stuff has replaced a lot of that, I would think.
No, because it's all fake bullshit. You know what I mean? How many times have you been like, oh, Sarah's life is so wonderful and oh, look how cute they are. And then literally like a week later, it's like, oh, my husband beats me and I actually had to call the cops. And what? And so many times, because it's taught
it's
people.
Not any more real in person.
Yes, it is.
No.
It used to be. You were a member of a Moose.
I've been a member of a community church in a town and gone to church with them every day, and the same story happens. So it's whether you're meeting in person or online.
You could say it's sexist. Maybe it is, but it was different because all these fraternal organizations were like mostly men. A lot of them had ladies auxiliary, but it was about dudes talking to dudes and being able to not have to put up a front for women, not have to be tough. And this is something that I've talked about with you. The guys are very different when they're, and I never understood it as a kid. It's like I used to tell people I love them all the time. And like a lot of my friends couldn't do it unless they had a beer. They didn't even have to be drunk, but it was like the talking stick. There's a social thing that women don't get because we weren't part of it. I didn't get it because I was raised by a single mother. I thought things were weird, but I was still in the world, But so I think that has been targeted, that has been taken away, and I think that really needs to come back.
Well, that may be part of
whenever it does,
targeting.
It's attacked massively.
The whole male structure of our society.
The Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. Hey, man, let's get a bunch of first responders and police officers and prison guards and military people that took an oath to uphold the Constitution to just come together and hang out and to take an oath that we will always uphold our oath to the Constitution, no matter what the government says, no matter whatever. Oh my God, they're a terrorist organization. We got to break them up. Every time that I can see in my lifetime, since they've kind of destroyed the fraternal organization, anytime one starts, they're attacked immediately.
Yeah, well, those guys used to be primarily responsible for what we used for health insurance back in the day too.
Yeah.
Right. The Friendly Society was essentially like direct primary care for regular people, in the sense that you would pay your dues, and part of those would go to paying for the organization's doctor to see you and your family.
Interesting. Plus, there's so many Shriner hospitals. Masons, they have like 15 hospitals that they never really talked about. This 33-degree Mason, he's like, we used to put this many $1 million into this many $1 million into research for this many, for cancer, all these things that they did.
But are you justifying what Big Pharma does to people and children? I mean, where does the evil stop and the good begin? That's a whole
because one is a faceless corporation. The other one is a community-based group of average Joes out there selling cookies and having bake sales to raise money to have a private sector hospital that the people control and has transparency. Very different. No, it does. It has to, because that's how the fraternal organizations work. They were, regulated for that. If you go and raise a bunch of money, you should know that. You have to prove that you're not putting it in your pocket, that you're not doing bad things with it. If you're the government, you got to have a lot less proof. If you're big pharma, you got to have a lot less proof. If you're Lisa Mighty Davis, there's going to be a bunch of, if you have a squirrel, there's 4 different agencies that can come after you. It's very different.
Speaking of which, Joe wanted us to discuss this with Sean, and I knew nothing about this until Sean told me on Tuesday. Well, I had heard a little bit of something about a squirrel, and I guess yesterday before Kamala's concession speech, there was a squirrel running across her desk or something, across the setup for her to speak. So I don't know. That was too much for me on the movie, but Joe's saying the execution of Peanut the squirrel and the Texas woman that reported him because he had more followers than her on Instagram. Why Texas? Why?
First off, Texas has not fallen. This is a big thing for us here. It's redder than it's ever been. And one of the big things was with Allred. He was giving Ted Cruz a fight. And then they had a debate, and it was just like Trump. He hit things on like trans issues.
We just got kicked off of Twitter.
Girls in boys and girls sports, that kind of thing. And he's like, this guy wants to have boys and girls sports. He wants to have the government pay for prisoners to have sex changes. He wants the taxpayers to have the military pay for this, sex changes, blah, blah, blah. And they know how the wind's blowing. This guy just stood there and said, I absolutely do not want boys and women's sports. I absolutely do not want that. I absolutely do not want this. Ted Cruz is a liar. And then Ted Cruz said, here's the bill that he voted for. Here's this other bill that he voted for. Here's a bill that does this, this, and this. And he sponsored it and voted for it. Here's this other bill that he voted for, but he sponsored it as well. And this lets any boy go into any girl's bathroom, any age, wherever. And that was it.
Huh.
It was done. He went up 6 points.
Was it apparent that that those bills did that, or was this a situation where?
No, it was blatant. He sponsored the bill. He read what it said in the bill.
Yeah.
And then that was it. There was no yelling. There was no. He was just. And then
he's like, "Yeah, I know you. I did that."
Yeah, he was like, he didn't say that's not what the bills say. He goes, I don't. But he just said the same thing. I don't believe in that. And he said, "Why did you vote for it?" And I don't even think he asked it because there's no more. It's like it was so
right. If that's what you believe, then
I'm not going to argue with you.
Did you, right?
I'm not going to I'm not going to entertain that. That's what when I was a financial advisor, dude. There were so many people that once, if somebody had like insurance and they had, investments, they wouldn't mess with them. And I knew that the stuff that I had was better than like the stuff that most people shilled because that was focused on the military and federal employees. So I'd be like, oh, that's great, man. You're so much further ahead than everyone else. You've got your shit together, brother. You're taking care of your family. You're a smart guy. Let's just put them next to each other. And then I'd be like, look, man. He's like, well, this is my dad's guy. My dad's, financial advisor. My dad told me to talk to this guy. So that's who I went to, and he took care of me. And I was like, well, yeah, this is, looks pretty good. But let's just see what, don't believe me. Don't believe that guy. Don't believe anything. Here, let's just put it side by side. This is going to give you $110,000 when you're ready to get out of the military. This is going to give you $240,000 at the current rates. But what's guaranteed? Guaranteed you got $86,000 versus $145,000, and you're putting in the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So
it's the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, and like I said, dude, don't listen to a word that I say. But just it's whatever the facts are because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that dude's feelings. It doesn't matter if he's your dad's guy. Doesn't matter if we've been best friends since we were 5. Dude, I would be wrong to give you bad advice and tell you to have less money for your family when you get out of the military.
Right.
So, and it's simple. And that's what he did, which facts matter again, which is the huge thing.
Yep, that is huge. That is huge.
So I think one of the things we discussed and one of the things that were significant was this, use of lawfare or overreach, and the fact that there were 4, I believe, different agencies that were investigating this. I don't know who this woman is that would have, what family she's connected to, or why she would be able to use this much of we the people's tax dollars. And
are we done with the questions?
No. Yes, we're done with questions. We're moving on to
current events. Okay.
Yes, current events. So I don't know why she would have that much power or influence, I should say, to then exert the state's power to execute a squirrel and harass its owner and
she doesn't
destroy.
That's the thing. Is a lot of these agencies rely on reports, right?
Well,
and
my thought,
somebody sent in a report at all.
My thought is the meme that they keep showing, and that's the if you think if they can do this to a squirrel, you're next or whatever. And I think it was a message to. And that's where, like, don't go to sleep, people. I know you think Trump won and we're all in la la land and it feels all squishy and, Breakfast Club right now, but they are still in power and they can still come for you. And the blob is still alive, you know?
Well, yeah,
she didn't have the power. Notice. She doesn't have the influence. I think this is a big wake-up call. We talk about the military-industrial complex. We talk about, huge corporations and big pharma, big this and big that. But the underlying thing is that it's money that controls politicians, that control the agencies. And what she did is she made a complaint, and she PETA got involved. So PETA is it's the same thing as Big Pharma or whatever. It shows the NGO, it shows the outside civilian workaround that these agencies use as an investigatory power, so on, that it's public. It's a public thing. I can't go in there without a warrant, but a regular person can go in there and film what they want and do what they want, and then they can bring it to the. So it's part of. I think it shows the loophole. Now I loved animals my whole life, but when I was a little kid, dude, I joined PETA when I was like 7 or 8, and I used to I literally had a lemonade stand. I would mow lawns. I would do to get the dues, take my birthday money. I would put it aside, and one of the ladies at the bank, she was the head of the PETA chapter, and I used to literally go into the bank, deposit my money, and pay her my dues to join PETA. And she had me speak at schools, and I was very active. And by the time I was 13, 14, I realized PETA is bad. It's an evil company or an agency. It's not what you think it is. They kill more animals than anyone else.
Because it's ideologically aligned with the idea that we shouldn't tame wild animals, right?
Yeah, it's radical.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, we should kill that animal rather than let someone have it as a pet.
Right, because it's been tamed, and we don't want the world to see examples of human beings interacting that closely with wild nature. Right.
It's literally like AI, the worst fears of AI. It's like, oh, you don't want to have less pollution. Well, they will kill this many people, and we'll have less pollution. They're that kind of mindset.
It's Malthusian in nature.
My point is, I saw it. I got out of it. It's at that age, I got out of it. So PETA alerted these agencies, and PETA was able to get this response.
Right.
Okay,
Similar to how the organizations they set up to foment censorship on social media would alert the press, and then the press would harangue the powers that be until they took some kind of censorious action. Very similar to that.
or how you had a couple people go and apologize a million times to the Biden household and find these documents, versus you had all these agents go to Mar-a-Lago and go through Melania's underwear drawer and his child's room. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very, very, very different. So you could see it, but and I think the distraction is this. Oh, this woman was just jealous and she did this. And first off, one of the biggest things is if where it happened, it's New York. New York is like the only worst thing could be in California, and it's almost not worse because you kind of would expect it from California.
Okay, that's where this Texas thing threw me, because I was like, I swear you said it was in New
No,
York.
it's in New York. So,
Yeah,
so New York has all of these problems, all of the immigrant with. It's New York, man. It's already a shambles, but it's so messed up right now. And they had the resources and the time and the money to send like 12 or 15 agents from 4 different agencies to this dude's house. And then they killed the animals right away. I think it's a much bigger deal than what people, because this, if you step back and look at it from a philosophical, religious, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, there's nothing that this man and his wife and these 2 animals, the squirrel and the raccoon, that they've done that isn't just 100% positive, 100% light, 100% good that they put out into the world. And this dude made tons of money. So you could say he's just doing it for the money. He's a dick. Every dollar that he got, he created a nonprofit to rescue animals. So
well, and even if he didn't, Elon Musk is not a dick because he makes a bunch of money. Why would somebody, doing it?
But then that gets away from what I'm talking about. My point is, there's nothing but positivity, good, and light coming from this area, and that I think is one of the reasons for the response. It was literally good versus evil.
Something good was happening.
It was literally Vader at the end of fucking Rogue Squadron, just killing the crap out of those dudes.
But don't you think it was so extreme to send a message to the people to say, like, if you don't think they can come after you, they just went after a squirrel and whatever. Right. Do you think you're safe?
No, because they did this to Trump. No, because they did it. There's so many other examples. But this, I think, was literally good versus evil. I think that the forces of evil were so brought in, and they killed it instantly. There's no time for reprieve. There's no time for outrage. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think this was an example of pure good versus
and their justification. Evil. Their justification was we have to do a rabies test.
Yeah, and that which is a lie.
Which is a joke.
The one guy said, "Oh, the squirrel bit me, so they had to kill." And then people are like, "No, they don't have to kill the animal anymore." The ATF did that a few years ago, and they literally chopped off the dog's head. Like the agent chopped the dog's head and brought it into the vet, and the vet was like, "What the hell are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, this dog bit me, so I chopped its head off and brought it in for you." They're like, "We don't do that anymore. You're nuts, man." But the ATF, they like
psychopaths, man. Like, honestly,
I think it was a lie in the first part, but the raccoon didn't bite you, and they still killed it.
Right.
So it's just such a clear example, and I literally think of like the forces of evil going after the forces of good. There's just it's so. There's nothing redeemable. There's nothing they can say. The size of what they did. The response to it was insane. Everything about it's insane. Everything about it is terrible.
Well, and I think it's another interesting fact too that pretty much every animal is tameable, right? Yeah, this is something that that organizations like PETA don't wish to see
Acknowledge.
spread. Like, imagine walking around in nature and the animals are friendly towards the people and they don't run away, right?
Yeah.
This is an outcome that they wish to not see because there's this sort of leftover sort of, and I would call it
Harmony.
the
Yeah.
grotesque form of romanticism, right? This idea that nature is hostile to man as part of its beauty is a nonsense concept, and people that do things like tame squirrels disprove that idea, and this is an idea that's foundational to that movement, that man is an interloper, that we're not part of nature.
Also,
Um,
to once
Uh,
again get religious and philosophical.
Wait a sec. Wait a sec. I
How
think
we started.
Andrew's
I'm
trying
sorry.
to. Andrew's
I
trying to
sorry.
make a
I
point.
had to split for the evening. I'm sorry, or for the morning.
Oh, okay.
I,
Well,
that's okay.
thanks for
sorry about
joining
that,
us.
guys.
No, no
It's no
problem.
problem.
It's all
Thanks
good,
for
Sorry.
man.
You
joining
guys
us.
have a good one. Okay.
Take care,
Bye.
Andrew.
Hanging
Cheers.
out. Take care. In the beginning, the Garden of Eden, before uh, original sin, that's how it was. It was literally man at harmony with nature, and nature at harmony with man. And I've been actually studying that this week, um, because this dude talked about how God created dinosaurs. In that everything was plant based, and he started showing like scientific stuff that alligators prefer watermelons and kumquats to chicken,
Huh.
um, which I didn't know. But he said that, and then he read certain scriptures where it talked about that the breaking of the covenant brought in sin, but and everyone focuses on people and brought in death with people, but it did with all the creatures. So he's like, that's when the T Rex started eating other dinosaurs. That's when then because there were like no carnivores. This is his theory. If you read through the scriptures, that when things were all harmonious, there was no fear. So like people didn't fear any animal, and no animals feared any other animals or any other people until and we were that's why we were given dominion, and then we broke it. So everything, all lions going out and eating kids and dingoes kicking babies, and it all goes back to that breaking of the covenant. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Certainly one perspective one can take. I just what I like to think of is the world we could build, right? Like, for instance, the advice that if you find a nest of baby bunnies, right, as you're mowing, and you take them out of the nest, they if you try to protect them, then what will happen is the mother will abandon them. This is not true. What in reality happens is uh, the way that they make those nests is to lace them with their own fur, right? Um, the scent of their own fur is how they know where to go feed, because they have so many babies that they just don't keep track, right? They're not memorizing the location of the nest. They're just going by scent. Um, so if you take some of that fur and you relocate it with the baby bunny to a safe spot, uh, the mothers will still find them, and it won't even necessarily be it's the mother that gave birth to it that feeds it. It'll be some other, could be some other mother rabbit, but if you relocate it, then they'll still get fed. I've done this myself in
Interesting.
moving bunnies from the front yard to the backyard, or the backyard to the front yard, and we watched as the mother rabbits would congregate towards dusk and feed any nest they could find the scent of.
Well, there's plenty of examples,
Right,
Greg, of like what you're talking about. Even other animals that aren't even the same animal, but it's a
right,
baby, and you give it to this dog or whatever, and that mother takes it in and starts to feed it.
right,
It's not even the same species, you know.
right.
So
Well, and
absolutely.
the idea that human beings are incapable of learning how to care for nature like that, to me is nonsense, especially in the day and age of YouTube. Because I didn't know that. I didn't. I learned it. I went out and I found the information, and we saved a couple baby bunnies because our dogs found the nest, and that was how that went down. But like, the idea that we are, as human beings, incapable of taking on that role with nature is insane. And really, to me, that's an abdication of our individual responsibility towards protecting our environment. That I think these agencies and these organizations like PETA don't want people to do, because it messes with the status quo in which they have power.
Well, you could expand that to humans taking on responsibility and caring for other humans as well.
Right,
And the
exactly.
state wants you to think that it needs to be handled through agencies and that agencies should raise our children and should be in charge of. But really, before foster care, in the 20s, when it was established, actually the first cases were actually these children were like living under a house and being mistreated and whatever, and they brought in the animal control because there wasn't a foster care agency or whatever, because prior to the 20s and the Great Depression and all that, the church would take care of, if because like Sean was saying, the communities together and people
Right.
knew each other. And so they knew if their mother died in childbirth and dad ran off because he was an alcoholic or whatever, then the community would take in the children, or the church would, help
Right.
the families. And that is what we have lost along the
Right.
way in
Well,
America.
I think
Once
there's a
again, you
desire
can
from
take it
authority
further,
to.
Lisa, and you will understand this. Just doing, you take in a child and you love it, and it becomes your child. That's your child. You love that child. And there are people who say, "Whoa, white lady, you just took in a black child. That's not acceptable.
No, that's not
You've
at all.
done a bad thing." I mean, you're talking about bunnies, and it can apply to people. There are people
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
who will say that that's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Yeah.
But
Anytime
there are
you're
people who
loving
actually
and
say that.
giving care, yeah,
Right.
it should be welcomed to make this world a better place for
Right.
sure.
We can protect life, and we should, and we can do that in non-dramatic ways. We can do that in little ways that
Yeah.
just make a difference where you're living, and that's really what people ought to be.
Also, to
remembering.
Greg's point, like he said, it's provable then that you can be in harmony with nature. There was some politician where someone said, you're a racist, and he said, why? Because I adopted two children from Bangladesh and they're my kids, and they were like, it's something that the dividers or people that want, just basically, we got to start saying good and evil, man. Something that evil people like want to be able to use, and there's when you can give some kind of refutable proof. Stephen Crowder said this, like whenever someone says, "I'm not a racist, I have black friends," I have, it's like that has become a racist statement. But he's like, why? That's literally a very good argument. If you were racist and didn't like these people, why would you bring them into your life in that capacity?
Yeah, why would you be friends?
Yeah,
Then?
why would you do that?
To prove that you're not a racist, so you can continue doing racist things? What?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's like,
well, but that's the whole anti-Semitic thing. They came up with the term anti-Semitic to protect the Jews from being attacked. It's like they say they make you the bad guy for saying the obvious, all this.
Right. Well, they refuse to draw a distinction between anti-Zionism, which is a political perspective,
yes.
and anti-Semitism, which is a bigotry perspective, right?
That's what shocked me the most about what's going on now, is because they openly use the Z word as good, and I was like, that's like, I thought
that may have been what got JFK killed. Yeah,
I thought that was a secret thing, that you don't say the Z word, you use the J word.
Yeah, how dare you question the motives of Benjamin Disraeli? Like he was never a terrorist, right? This is the sort of thing that I think confuses the conversation, because good people can support people without supporting nations, right? And this is again, I think, dovetails with sort of just the general love of life and the living that we have to get back to as a people, and that, if this election is about anything, it's about not becoming complacent about that again. It's about taking back our agency to be forces for good in the world, because human beings, right? There aren't specifically evil people and there aren't specifically good people. Good and evil runs through the hearts of all of us, and we have to choose the good.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, and there are
We
people
have to
who've
feed the
chosen
wolf,
evil.
the good wolf, and not the bad wolf.
There are people who have chosen evil, and that they've chosen it rather consciously, right? Whether or not they know it's evil or not is a question, but I think choosing good is what we all have to do now, and it's not something that we can abdicate by just electing somebody who sides with good ostensibly, right? We now have was the never-ending struggle to keep it
Every
in
day,
front of us.
choosing it every
Yeah.
day. Andrew, I'm so glad that you popped back in. I want to make sure I give you an opportunity. I also don't want to like bomb you if you weren't ready to respond, but if you were listening while you were away, if you have comments on the current discussion.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance to listen in.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh,
I just
cool.
wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity. We're getting a little cathartic there, which is really sweet. Doing something positive.
Sorry for having to pop out like that.
No, you're
No
good. You're
worries.
good. We have just a few more minutes left. Do you guys, is there any other I mean, pretty much everybody's talking about the election and all the stuff. Do we have something else we want to bring?
You know the Polish guy?
My grandfather. I mean, I don't know.
You know, the Polish guy, he's everywhere. He's here for Parliament. I forget his name, but he's an amazing dude. And he was on the Patrick Bet-David election thing, which was huge. And at the end of the night, they had Cenk Uygur come on there. Which kudos to Cenk for having the cojones to go and to do that, because the crowd wasn't friendly, but he was blah 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 blah, and then the Polish dude who is a hilarious fellow, but he said something to him. He's like, you people talk about unity. Here's your chance to put your money where your mouth is. You lose gracefully and talk about unity. And he's like, who is this dude? He's not even American. Then he makes everyone chant USA. Like USA, USA. He's like, who is this dude? He's not even an American. You don't tell people to say USA. And he's like, why are you even here? And the dude said, I'm here because I lived in the Soviet fucking Union. And I saw what communism did. And it was Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul that freed my people from that tyranny. He said, and I'm here to pay respect to this country and to the people that led that and gave my people their freedom back and beat the Soviet Union. That's why I'm here, because I respect this country. And I love what they did for my people. He said, and I see that you people and that Kamala Harris are literally communists. And I do not, and I will not allow the United States to fall. And then it was like mic drop. I thought that was it's a good clip. We should.
That's where the history is so important, and education has fallen and has failed America and our citizenship because of the lack of education and true history. And once again, that's where blockchain, dragon chain can come in, because if we really have those issues brought forward, education brought forward, I think part of them taking cursive writing out of schools is so that we can't know our past, our history. We can't read the Constitution. The kids can't read the Constitution. They can't read a letter from their grandparents because it's in cursive, because they've all, are taught typing and they print everything, but there's no focus on.
They're not even taught typing.
The unfortunate thing
it's called keyboarding now. I call it typing. And they're
right.
Like, hey, granddad, no.
No, they called it keyboarding when I was in high school too. But
thanks for making me feel even
I was
older.
going to say, now we know Greg is younger.
Hey, way to flaunt it, young guy.
Yeah, 1982 was a pretty long time ago. The the thing about cursive though, for somebody who's like me, you know, a lefty who is also not exactly fine tuned with this, but great with a computer. That the gift of seeing that go away, because I literally had a third grade teacher tell my parents that I would never get an A in handwriting because I was a left-handed person.
Shame on you.
Right.
The
Oh yeah.
shame.
No. Exactly. So to a certain degree, I was glad to see it go, but I do see your point.
Yeah, for me, it's just
there's
about the history and telling the storytelling that, and being able. I mean, I think it's important to like read, not be told what to know or think about history, but like I love one of the things Bitcoin Ben taught me when we were traveling all over is like he loved reading the letters of Abraham Lincoln to his wife or to whoever, and that's the way he ingested history, was reading personal letters.
Oh,
to
primary sources
people.
are like the only way to learn history.
Right.
The best way.
There's a company that sends a lot of letters, but it's a copy of the handwritten letter, and then there's like anything that was included in it, pictures, certificates, all these other things, of correspondence from like Eisenhower to this person, from Lincoln to Lee, all these historical letters, and you can pay for it. It's not cheap. I got it for my son Alex.
That's really
But
cool.
it's every week or 2 weeks he gets a letter from history, and it's an actual handwritten letter.
Oh, that's a cool company.
That is a
cool company.
great gift. Yeah.
But yeah, but I want to hit on that. There's a huge controversy that I've found now, that all of these, like if you look at old, and you can just scratch the surface, just old books from our like in America, anything before like 1900, there's so much different information that was changed in like the early 1900s that contradicts certain things, that the rewriting of history basically. And then there's sci-fi movies. Rollerball talked about this dystopian future where, oh no, all books are digital here at the library now. And then the guy's like, well, can't you just change the book by typing in a couple things and changing all the books for everyone around the world? And they're like, well, yes, but I don't think anyone would do that. That you would never, don't shut up, mate. Don't ask that.
They revised 1984 to remove the part where they talk about revising books.
But going back super far, a lot of the original wisdom is in Greek, not Latin. And they talk about when they changed it from Greek to Latin, that was like a lot of it was lost in the
a major revisory point, right?
Yeah, and there's this there's a man who's been marked as a massive heretic by the Catholic Church. They say that he's possessed by Satan, and he basically, his point is, you have to read it in the original Greek or the original whatever the original writing is to know the true form of what it means or what the person was saying.
Dude,
and
some of the best writers were heretics, right?
I for Am's the one that turned me on to this guy. And he does say some rough stuff, man, but he's like, this is what it says. It says that, a lot of like, it's a big thing about drugs. A lot of drugs back in the old days that they used.
I mean, they weren't even, there was literally no regulation on drugs before 1910.
We're talking like, but he's like Jesus and the apostles using drugs.
Oh,
sure. They were. It was part of what they did.
You could have a spiritual experience with the right mushroom, and it was not illegal. It was considered spiritual. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's so. Favorite heretics? Then that's a good question. Who's your favorite heretic, Sean?
Favorite heretic?
Favorite heretic.
It's not a heretic, but as a child growing up in the little child in the 70s, kind of at the end of MLK, like my mom was involved with MLK and all that. Malcolm X. I was just told violence, bad guy. Violence, bad guy. Martin Luther King, no, non-violence, good guy. And now I'm like hearing the stuff that Malcolm X talked about, and I'm like, damn, he was spot on. You know what I mean? About the white liberal, and it's all kind of a sham.
He was into it. Yeah, he was on.
Government's bad. It's
right. And he warned everybody to be careful of propaganda, for example, because you could end up rooting for the side that's doing the oppressing.
Exactly. Yeah.
This will be our parting comment then. Why don't we do that? Sean, do you have anything else? Because we're getting close to the end here.
Yeah, we're real close. Check out my channel. Got interviews going. Check out the Man Up with the Red Pill podcast, which this week I'm going to get out on all of the podcast platforms. But now we have a YouTube channel, and you can check it out. We had a buddy of ours, Tommy from Gription, which is a band from the 90s, which is way ahead of its time. You check them out on Spotify or wherever. Cool. Very cool rock band. Thinking about like the stuff that's going on now. So they were about probably 5-10 years ahead of their time. But it's a great conversation we had.
Awesome. Cool. Andrew, how about you? Who is your favorite heretic, and what's going on your channel, The Legacy Right?
Well, I don't know if I have a favorite heretic per se. I just more of an observation that power contracts, and in that contraction, not only do you lose context of the situation, but that gives more marketing to people that are, looking to maybe make you into a heretic. So, and nothing in particular that I know of. Zach would be more informed about what's going on with the channel. So
we'll send him our best wishes and let him know we missed him at the show today. We'll be looking forward to seeing him back again. And thanks for being here with us. Greg, let us know the original.
Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, my favorite heretic. He once said, the future belongs to those who give the next generation a reason to hope. And I think that's more salient now than it's ever been. And as far as what's up with me this week, I'm looking for a new thing to be all in on, right? Because I've been all in on U.S. politics, and now I need to refine my focus so that I can continue to push for what I see as the good. And I think that's what everybody should be doing right now. Don't lose that energy, redirect it. And that would be my exhortation to anybody watching this.
He told me that since he's been all involved in U.S. politics, now I have to be all involved in EU and British politics and get involved and study it now. So now I got to do that.
There you go.
Interesting. I know the EU just posted some great information about the Vatican, and I believe it was Italy getting involved in our politics. So hopefully we'll hear more about that soon. My favorite heretic is this one over here, Design Heretic. Mm-hmm. So follow him on Twitter and Truth Social. What's that other platform you love?
There's also
MySpace.
Warpcast, yeah.
What was
Warpcast
it called?
Is awesome.
Yeah.
Warpcast or Farcaster Network. Any client can connect to it. It's an open protocol that anyone can design a front end for. They even have an anonymous posting capability through Supercast, which is incredible too. So definitely check that one out for people who aren't on there. I'm the same. I'm Design Heretic there too. So
okay, so find him there. And you guys can find me, like Quinn Lisa, on YouTube, or Lisa Mighty Davis on Twitter, X, but you can mostly find me at the Mighty Lair on den.social. So we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.